we got new Mortis here. Community AMA. Cool. So quickly, agenda wise, gonna do a quick kind of high level run through of some thoughts from last playtest, some recent changes, the game world, and kind of the scope for early alpha in October. Go through some like upcoming timelines, things that are coming down the road, roadmap, and then yeah, kind of just open it up to any questions here. But yeah, as we kind of get closer to early alpha, like kind of peeling back the curtain a bit to get you guys plugged in more of the development process and just share more of the vision. It's always fun, and kind of fielding some questions there. As is obvious, like you guys play a huge part in the developments. Like the feedback is pretty influential for us in terms of driving direction of like building a game that you guys want. So I'm very excited to kick these off. But yeah, maybe for those who are new or watching the recording, maybe a quick intro into what is Cambria. Yeah, essentially we're building in a very experimental, sandbox MMO where essentially you risk crypto to earn your share of the rewards. So a lot of high stakes competition, a lot of PvP, kind of both on the economic side as well as actual PvP. So inspiration wise, RuneScape, huge inspiration there. Some older sort of old school MMOs. But yeah, I'd say the defining part of the gameplay is risk reward, right? Every sort of minute that you're in Cambria, like there should be some multiple layers of risk reward, sort of scenarios playing out, and then kind of the smartest players that are adapting to the changing meta, kind of are the ones on top. We also kind of want to put some of this stuff on chain as well, because I think a big part of the PvP stuff is going to be connecting DeFi with basically making it a real economy that we can have NFT loans on, or kind of the additional things in DeFi that kind of make some of this interesting. And I'll kind of like touch on that more. But yeah, maybe some background as well on just like why we started Cambria. So development was kind of always about like creating a game that we wanted to play. So as someone who spent most of my childhood in RuneScape, like the market and economy was like the most interesting part to me. But now that I'm kind of older, like most games are almost like not interesting anymore, right? They're kind of boring, right? I think it's mostly like the stakes aren't high enough, right? It's kind of like not dangerous enough, right? Like when you were playing RuneScape at 11 years old, you got the shit scared of it. Whenever you're going near the wizards right outside of Iraq, whatever. But now it's kind of like whatever, right? But yeah, I mean like a lot of like I think a lot of similar folks like kind of get a thrill out of aping shitcoins or like NFTs, right? So I think yeah, I mean like for us, it's like people really want to play like these high stakes games where like their decisions matter, like there's actual winners and losers. And I think like yeah, the high stakes kind of like solve the why care about like a game, right? And you also like kind of get like emergent behavior where if a Web2 MMO tried to do this, it'd be like playing poker with like fake chips or whatever, right? You kind of need some stake in the some investment to start immersing them. So yeah, that's kind of like why we started Cambria, like some of the background behind this. But yeah, like in terms of development, we've been kind of like building out the game engine ever since we started. So the first thing was like to get to parity with some of the MMOs out there. So RuneScape, like they've been building for like 20 years, right? So even that was a huge hurdle. Like obviously we're not even close to there yet. But the goal is to get like 80% of the way there, where 80% of the gameplay that players care about, like is enough to kind of be close, right? Enough to experiment with. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. But yeah, like so Gold Rush is kind of the first iteration of this vision. So the core kind of fantasy of Gold Rush is like almost like exploration, exploitation, like kind of this struggle for resources inside of a new world. So like obviously drawing heavy inspiration here from like California Gold Rush, where essentially all these settlers came in, spent a lot of money to kind of get rich, right? We're starting this initial like rush off with blast gold, ETH as well being spent on charter mints, and kind of like splitting it out at the end. It's sort of a season based model, mostly because at least right now, like we want to make sure we can iterate. So every new season, like there's something a little different. But yeah, like maybe can go through some stats from the last playtest. But yeah, last playtest takeaways wise, like the good was like fantastic metrics. I think we have like our perfect sort of people call it like the golden core, right? Like this is like you guys are like kind of the key audience, the perfect audience for Gold Rush, like the grinders, what have you. Some key highlights. Let me see if I have this on. Yeah, we got the screenshots here. Yeah, so emergent gameplay, like saw a lot of kind of player coordination and just tactics, strategy. You see like Kim and Squad here, number one. Yeah, quite fun kind of content coming out of there. In terms of like improvements, like obviously improvements to PvP and kind of like balancing of like royal favor, drop system, stuff like that. That's pretty straightforward. A lot of content still on the roadmap that we were just missing some key game loops, like for example, like the casual gameplay, right? The free to play elements of it, layering in some of the more on chain stuff. I think like the full ETH sort of capital deployments, right, is not quite there yet. And then obviously strongholds and guilds, like still needs a ton of work. There's kind of not enough there to there's another 3 months or so of development. So maybe the biggest change that I want to go through today is kind of like this split into two continents that we're pretty much doing. So the reason, so okay, so maybe the problem, right? So from a there's a couple problems right now. Number one, like scaling. So right now it's on a single world, right? We have this kind of persistent world that you have the strongholds, like it's almost like capped by just technical limitations, right? RuneScape had like 2K world. I think like we've done some early tests, and like 2K is kind of our current limit for how much we can go to. But we could maybe even go up to like 5K, 10K with kind of like selective like splitting, like some loading screens, what have you. But yeah, it kind of doesn't work. When we want to get to the scale that we want. I think for the early alpha, like we're shooting for like 5K, right, 10K sort of concurrence. So that's not something that we can currently do with this persistent world. So the problem there is like if we scale up to multiple worlds, let's say like spin up 5 to 10 worlds, like some of RuneScape, like now the persistent sort of single shard sort of MMO doesn't work. Like some of the elements there with like let's say you have a stronghold, like do you capture that stronghold on world 1 or do you capture it on world 4? Right now, some of that gameplay is different. The other kind of problem that we're running into is like maybe to go back, like, a lot of the tricky part of Web3 games is, and this is something we're kind of like discovering, is that, it's kind of like a real economy, right? So real economies are like very kind of fragile things that require a lot of things to go right. So like, because you're competing with, other products like shitcoins, whatever, for attention and kind of players. But yeah, economies are like one of the very things that, few things that are very hard to get right, and they benefit at scale, right? You need kind of like multiple fun game loops that are working at scale to get the network effects where, you kind of create enough scalable content to kind of keep players engaged, right? So like the just sheer number of like potential types of players, right? You have the casual players, so like the hardcore like grinders, the players at the top of our leaderboard. You have more the idle type players, like they only have a couple hours a day or like even less than that, right? A couple minutes a day, right? They're busy at family, whatever, but they're still willing to kind of deploy ETH into a game. And then maybe PVM versus PvP, like you have people that enjoy PvP. You have more the farmer audience, like play to earn versus like the whales, right? There's all these like kind of layers that it's hard to please everyone, right? So I think like what we're trying to do with Gold Rush, at least right now, is kind of focus on Gold Rush and kind of like get that shipped, and then kind of like follow up with what we actually like some of the early playtests, like we called it like DJ Wars, right? But basically this Crownlands sort of expansion. So let me just go through some of the slides here with a map. I think it'll make a little more sense. So Gold Rush is kind of this initial V1. So basically, Gold Rush doesn't have the strongholds, right? We're probably going to phase out the strongholds and kind of like replace them with something kind of. It's still something there. You could potentially capture, but it's not like a kind of persistent sort of gold ore sort of supply. But essentially, as you can see on this map, the lore and Sergey is actually Trin's actually here. He can kind of like go into some of the lore as well and the world building. But essentially, it's like like darkness, like is kind of like the new world, like like some like catastrophe has kind of like destroyed the entire world, and then basically the center is this only like source of light. We're still working on some of the lore docs here, but essentially, yeah, that's kind of the capital city, right? Basically, the further out you go, the more dangerous it gets, and obviously the more enticing the rewards, right? So as you can see, the capital city, and then essentially this little island here is the connection to the Crownlands. So you can also compare it to, let's say, like Spain, right? Sending ships to colonize the Americas, right? They have Spain, which like have all these royal houses and like these very entrenched kind of power, and then they're kind of like max mining this new world and kind of like sending these resources back home, right? So essentially, Gold Rush is like in the future, in the final vision of the game, right? Is going to be the resource kind of hub that funds the war effort back home. So the Crownlands is kind of the EVE Online sort of like the Degen War stuff, like massive armies, like that on this like single persistent world. In terms of the energy, it'd probably be like much higher versus like Gold Rush is maybe much more accessible to like the free to play player. But we kind of want like the Crownland stuff. Let me switch to this new slide as well. So this is like Q4 2024, like we're still working on this. But yeah, like basically with this single persistent world, someone kind of like maybe like destroying a watermill right in the Crownlands, like that causes like downstream problems like amongst the islands that you see to the left. Yes, we're doing islands. It's called like the yeah. I'm not gonna go too far into that, but yeah, essentially there supply disruptions and kind of like maybe going back to New Cambria, like now that maybe for some reason like the uncharged essence is like cut off or somebody takes over the supply, like now that kind of like changes the dynamics of the war back home. So yeah, like essentially Crownlands is kind of the global stage. Like you have this massive sort of Game of Thrones struggle for dominance, and then all of that is kind of funded by Gold Rush and like kind of all these multiple worlds with tens of thousands, 50,000 sort of players. So yeah, like in terms of like the exact energy kind of like differentiation, like Crownlands is kind of like the product for more risk to earn, right? The thing with risk to earn is like you guys are like niche, right? Like it's a very sort of niche product. But like that's like the product where like a lot of the ETH can kind of like be deployed, and like if we build stuff on chain, like that's where it kind of becomes interesting. So yeah, that's in a nutshell sort of the split there. But yeah, this is kind of like the lore of the Crownlands. We're still working out the exact details here. But yeah, again, Q4 2024. Yeah, this is sort of that in. So I think like in terms of the initial starting spot, like everybody will kind of land in this sort of starter island, and we'll probably convert this to similar to RuneScape's like what is it, tutorial island? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Where you have like initial kind of like starting tutorial, and then basically you have a choice, right? Do you go to the new world like New Cambria? Do you go to Gold Rush? Like that's the cheaper, potentially free to play as well, or do you kind of just take the ship just straight into back to the Crownlands? Oh, sorry, not the ship, the portal. So the portal kind of like connects these two continents. But yeah, this slide is kind of like, in the future when we do on-chain elements, probably Gold Rush is there's not going to be a ton on-chain. Like obviously the price pool, the charter mints. We're probably going to do a soulbound sort of character NFT that is going to be preserving kind of some of the achievements, kind of like permanently on your accounts, your progress, your ranking inside of each season. Obviously the energy orbs, and we're also working on this new collection called trinkets, which are essentially rare, very very rare drops that you get inside of Gold Rush from bosses, like from various sources that, essentially you get, once you get the drop, it's like minted to you as an NFT and it gets added to a single global collection. So these trinkets are basically, you can equip one or two of them on your character, and then they kind of like give a buff as well as a debuff. So, there's kind of some interplay there, but, a lot of randomness in between, right? Like, maybe like, plus 5% fire resist, but, maybe, the downside is like, increased stress, right? Like outside the castle. If you're familiar with Darkest Dungeon, like similar kind of system, but essentially yeah, that would be carried through worlds. So once you get that NFT, like you can use it the next season. We probably add some limits as well. Like you can only withdraw like let's say like 3 out of your entire collection of trinkets like per season. Also like depending on the meta game per season, right? Maybe this next season it's like fire themed, right? There's a shit ton of fire monsters. Now maybe your trinket that has like fire resist is like more valuable. Like you kind of have like between seasons, like some trading OTC of and some collecting of those stats as well. So yeah, that's trinkets. We have some other stuff as well planned for the Crownlands, but that stuff is much more kind of complicated. Yeah. So in terms of the next playtest, actually this is kind of like the roadmap for before we launch the early alpha, because we're targeting kind of a 20 sort of 30 days sort of month long season, initial early alpha season in October. So we'll definitely need substantial amount of content there, and kind of enough gameplay to feed that much. So yeah, lots of new skills coming, improvements to existing skills. It's kind of the final stretch of content, if you will, to get us there. Obviously, by October, like it's not going to be like a huge amount of gameplay either. But hopefully it'll be enough to kind of like get the point across. And then based on what we learn from the actual early alpha, we'll iterate there. Cool. Yeah. So playtest number 5 is next Friday. We'll drop some docs soon here. We're doing our Genesis NFT collection here soon. Been planning this for a while. Actually, not gonna answer any questions on this. We're keeping the details under wraps, but we'll start teasing some info pretty soon. After that, probably doing one final playtest, and then October we'll kind of be hitting early alpha. And with early alpha again, like the free to play, sort of like putting some juice with like referral rewards, like it's gonna be we're kind of going a little bigger there. And then yeah, Crownlands and kind of TG in the future. But yeah, that's kind of into the slides, kind of what we had. Happy to answer any questions. We also have the full team on here, so yeah, maybe Geo or I think Ciro is handling questions in Chinese, but if we need to do any translations there. That's a good question. Maybe Thomas, you want to answer that? I think he's on mute. Hello. Well, yeah, yeah. The quick answer is yes. We're like there's like a variety of different issues, a lot of which we fixed. But these playtests like just fucking slamming 600 players at it, have definitely helped. We're also building some internal tooling to kind of like do testing as well on our side. But also once at least for Gold Rush, like we'll be spinning up X number of worlds to handle however many concurrent players. So that will also handle it. Probably going towards like 2K per world. Like the server itself is actually quite beefy. It's kind of like some of the layers in between that are a little annoying. Also a lot of the lag is less of the server as well. Like well, it used to be the server, but a lot of it was perceived like just with the front end. Like there's a lot of optimizations that some of our devs have made. I think the second day of the last playtest, like we had a pretty big PR going to fix a lot of those issues. But yeah, again, like if you continue to kind of run into some issues, like definitely report it. It's definitely helpful for our devs. Yeah, we're gonna drop a cyclops on Mr. Thomas here. So Smoke asks, since you're targeting 20 to 30 day seasons, how do you view playtime? Will you gatekeep how much time people can play, or people play 24/7 if they like? Yeah, so the thing with 24/7 play is like it depends on what they're doing, right? If it's like extractive, yeah, like extraction gameplay, right? Like, where you're getting something from the game world, like you're hitting the ore rock and getting adamantine ore out of it. Like that has to be kind of like reduced, right? So like like you've seen like other MMOs like kind of do an energy system where it's like per action, like per node. Like that's also like kind of tricky to balance like across like all the different types of skills we have. So currently like our energy approach is like just based on time. We'll kind of like keep playing with it. I think like we're trying to target like maybe 4 hours just base energy, and then potentially like three additional sort of energy orbs. Like where there's certain advantages to spending some more time, but like kind of diminishing returns like the more time you spend. Because really with that, like we're trying to aim for the average sort of player, right? The average sort of gold rush player. There's gonna be players obviously that are more the idle type that just want to kind of click buttons and like spend like 5 minutes on the game, and that's fine. We'll have game loops for them. But yeah, kind of figuring out the rest is it's more of a just tweaking sort of. How long will the next playtest last? Probably same amount of time. The changes are more kind of content wise, so not a lot of difference there. Also like without some of the strongholds type gameplay. How are essence calculated in Gold Rush from top one to top 50? Yeah. So essence points are interesting, or rewards are interesting in general. I think with the blast gold and the ETH, we're probably gonna still keep it 100% based on royal favor. With essence points, like right now with a playtest, we can kind of get away with like doing just like 10 different factors, right? And kind of like, doing that after the playtest and kind of like manually, right? But I think like by the time you'll see us in early alpha, like it's gonna be a little bit different. It's gonna be kind of earned in game, like just by doing things, right? Like getting XP, like killing mobs, like you're just gonna kind of get a steady drip of essence points. And then at the higher level, for players that want to deploy a lot of ETH to earn more essence points, there'll be ways of doing that. Like you already saw kind of the sponsoring of players. We'll probably have similar things where they can kind of compete on the rolling 24-hour leaderboard for essence points as well. But yeah, kind of two layers to that. Yeah, so the large scale macroeconomic gameplay for Gold Rush, there's not too much of that. We'll probably have a V1 of the Crownlands in conjunction with the Gold Rush launch, where essentially you're kind of depositing ETH and then you're kind of risking it at a higher level, like at a manager sort of level. So either like almost like I don't know if you guys have played the recent like Path of Exile season, but you have the shipments there where you're deploying some ETH and like potentially getting a reward there, or kind of like it comes back and like the ship is broken and what have you. We're definitely trying to like incentivize like some of the sponsoring, like we think that is pretty interesting, so we'll probably keep doing that. But basically yeah, some game loops there where you can kind of like get involved like at a kind of macro level. But that's probably not going to be fully developed like versus the full kind of Crownlands release, where it's like you have like guilds that have like millions of dollars in their guild chests that are like doing all this like complicated DeFi stuff to lending what have you to kind of control on chain sovereignty. Yeah, the NFT is the founders. No details specifically on that yet, but it's actually quite coming out quite soon. How will Crownlands get distribution considered to Gold Rush? Yeah, that's a good question. So with Essence points, I think with any points program, like it kind of sucks for the average player, but like kind of you need to reward like ETH deployments and kind of ETH at risk. So kind of scaling based on that. You saw that with Blur, you saw that with Blast. Kind of our methodology would kind of be similar. Right now, kind of early playtesters wise, like you're kind of getting a very good deal, like very limited kind of capital deployments and still getting a ton of essence points. Mostly because we get a kind of like a lot of good data out of it, and a lot of the essence points from last playtest, like we heavily emphasized the feedback side, kind of doing unique sort of things in game. So yeah, this is actually a great time. But closer to launch, it'll probably be kind of like very kind of ETH sort of deployment heavy. But yeah, TGE wise, like we're shooting for a Q4, so it'd actually be kind of similar around the same time. But again, like post TGE, we're allocating part of the token to incentivize like season two, season three of the game. I think that's actually when it would start really hitting stride with some of the sort of PvP at the higher level. Geez, Swan has a shit ton of questions. Um, 12, 24 hours to get feedback on dynamics. That's a very good idea. We could kind of do that with one-off things. The thing is, like with Blast Gold, like we kind of have to give it out every month. So even if there's not a huge change that we need to, but it's always fun to kind of like put it out there. I really do like the very short season, like kind of flash Gold Rush idea. Like given the current setup, like with the competition, it's pretty cool. Leaderboard game, yes, we're getting rid of that. We're like very heavily nerfing it. PvP guild PvP event to incentivize PK. Yes, yes. Definitely. I think got a lot of great feedback last playtest. So definitely the artifacts dropping on death as a reward for PKers. And then yeah, guild PvP maybe. Guild PvP is not going to be a huge thing in our current scope for Gold Rush, at least for early alpha, but we'll see how it goes. I think PvP is more of kind of just economy control. Like if you played Albion, you kind of the black zone sort of PvP. Sounds like. Oh jeez. Dude, some of these questions. Where are the mods? Where are the mods? That's a good
This is the
question.
community you built.
How do you view the current state of each class? Do you intend for people to play all three classes, or viable to run all content on one main? Yeah, we actually have been talking about this. Not decided yet. Like, obviously we could do the RuneScape side, like, breeding, right? Like, you just fucking switch, fast switch between weapons. It's very niche, I feel like. Like it doesn't translate super well to modern gameplay. And like with like especially like, once we do Crownlands, like kind of like big EVE Online type, massive battles, like you're not gonna want like some guy just like swapping between like mage and range in like 2 seconds and like doing that type of shit. So like but PvP there is gonna be more tactics based, be more stat checking, kind of like your supply lines, like your really the numbers, versus like actual like kind of but like with Gold Rush, like some of the PvP, I don't know, like maybe like the easiest way to not do that would just be adding some sort of timer when you switch between trading the performance of players is very interesting. If you have an island, I mean, you kind of see this with pixels, right? If you have an island and you have people kind of working it, and you're kind of it's almost like a manager game, but instead is like kind of real people, and they're kind of like also specializing in certain things versus the other. Um, could be quite interesting. PvP needs to have a high skill ceiling. How are you going to achieve it? Yeah, yeah. I think like once most of the content is there, we'll kind of do another playtest. That might be the last playtest, kind of just PvP V2, because the first time around was very kind of simplistic. But yeah, we'll kind of be another go. Like the thing is, like PvP can't be too skill heavy. Like given the real sort of money stakes, like yeah, like too high of a skill cap, like it's yeah, it just creates some problems with the economics. But um, yeah, we obviously want to reward sort of the higher skill sort of gameplay. Cool. I think we are hitting. Are we hitting time? I think we're like 30 minutes in. Maybe like one or two more questions here, and we'll close it off. Will there be something on the map to demarcate which difficulty zone you're in? Yeah. So we we had an indicator that actually didn't make it in. It just says like at the top left, like what your current zone is. It's gonna be just like green, red, yellow, black, um, and then kind of the penalties for each. Previously, it was actually based on like more of a circular sort of system, but we've recently changed it to trade just went in and kind of like marked out every single tile, right? Is it in tier 3? Is it in tier 2? Yeah, it would definitely be nice. First NFT collection is going to be here in a couple weeks, and land plots, yes, maybe soon. Yes, it's pretty soon. Was this win Jur? Dude, where is Jur? He has abandoned us. Sad. Last playtest after death, I was able to come back to my own grave, but clicking on it does nothing. My items dropped on death was here. Yeah, so last time, there's actually a bug that I don't think many people noticed, but you would just like the items would just disappear. Your equipment would just disappear, even for your killer if you're killed in PvP. So we did actually fix that. So should be better now. But yeah, maybe it's like the more expensive the gear, the longer it lasts. Somebody else might come around and pick it up, but yeah, running back to your grave is that's a cool mini game. Solio says anyone who goes to the labyrinth of the Cyclops will mint the NFT naked and with a whip. Sounds like a Chernobyl runs. That's great, dude. Some of these suggestions in our DA chat are quite funny, and the gold chat. Mailbox system between players, so I can send from A to B. Interesting. Might be a little overpowered. But yeah, we do have a mailbox system.
You could do it like
Yeah.
WoW, where it's like if you're delivering anything of value, it's like an hour and 40 minutes or an hour or
Yeah,
something for it
it
to
just takes
arrive.
or it costs more. Yeah. Yeah. Well, but yeah, we're working on melee, trying a couple things. I think big part of it is having a burst. But all right, any final questions here before we wrap up? Oh, also, we have new stickers. So check those out. These were created for us by our good friends at Starbase. We have some quests there as well if you guys want to get some free gems. This is Matilda and Arthur. Matilda the trading post and Mr. Arthur from the bank. Fun fact. Arthur is actually one of our earliest players. One of our earliest playtesters. We were like, hey, we need a bank NPC. What do we call it? Arthur. Also, we need to vote on whether the new Minotaurs. We changed the name to Mr. Minotaur. I think it's quite funny. Dude, new players are gonna be in the game like 2 years from now. Be like, what are these Chinese devs doing? Can't even spell Minotaur correctly. All right, I think we'll cut it off here. Thanks everyone for coming. We'll share a recording here as well. But yeah, super excited for next Friday, for early alpha, and yeah, stay tuned. Thanks y'all. Peace.